Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the controversy surrounding Joe Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Joe Biden was born in 1942 in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He served as a U.S. Senator for the state of Delaware from 1973 to 2009. From 2009 to 2017, he was the Vice President of the United States. Joe Biden finished his career with one term as president, serving from January 2021 through January 2025. During his presidency, there were many concerns about Joe Biden's cognitive abilities and physical health. Just a few examples. He repeatedly wandered around in a state of disorientation. He tripped while climbing stairs. There were internal discussions about putting him in a wheelchair due to his tendency to halt when he was walking. Joe Biden appeared to have memory problems. He did not recognize many people who he should have recognized, like key aides and the Hollywood actor George Clooney. Joe Biden would use words incorrectly, appeared to be incoherent, and misstated the names of locations. He would sometimes read words on teleprompters out loud which were not supposed to be read out loud, like repeat the line or end of quote. Joe Biden frequently told personal anecdotes which were inaccurate, like he said he was arrested in South Africa when he was trying to visit Nelson Mandela. The volume of Joe's speech was sometimes very low, and he rarely interacted with the press. Despite these many health concerns, in February 2024, Joe's physician declared him fit to serve. A terrible debate performance against Donald Trump in June 2024 led to Joe Biden giving up on his re-election campaign. He endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris, who of course was ultimately defeated by Donald Trump. 82-year-old Joe Biden left office in January 2025 as the oldest living president in American history. After leaving office, he gave interviews where he resisted the idea that he had suffered from cognitive decline, claiming that there was no evidence to support that conclusion. Joe further claimed that if he stayed in the presidential race, he would have defeated Donald Trump. An audio recording of Joe Biden's October 2023 interview with special counsel Robert Hur was publicly released. In the recording, Joe could be heard struggling to recall personal and political events, like the day that his son Beau died and the year that Donald Trump was elected president. This served to support the concerns that many people had about Joe Biden's cognitive abilities. At the time I'm making this video, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee is investigating whether White House officials concealed negative information about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On Friday, May 16, 2025, it was announced that Joe Biden had been diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. The cancer, which had metastasized to his bone, was detected after Joe reported urinary symptoms. His cancer was assigned a Gleason score of 9 out of 10, indicating the cells were very likely to advance quickly. A score of 8 or above is considered high risk. Joe Biden's cancer is incurable and aggressive. In all likelihood, he had the cancer for a while, probably for at least 5 years. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Prostate cancer is the second most common cancer for men. Skin cancer is the most common. 13% of men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer during their lifetime. 60% of the new cases occur in men over the age of 65. About 10% of prostate cancers are already metastatic by the time they are diagnosed. The 5-year survival rate is 97%, but in cases where the cancer has spread to other parts of the body, the rate drops significantly. Individuals with stage 4 prostate cancer have a 32% chance of living for 5 years. Item number 2. The most common screening tool for prostate cancer is a blood test that measures the level of prostate-specific antigen. This is also called the PSA test. The last time Joe Biden had this test was in 2014, 11 years before he was diagnosed. This has led to theories that Joe Biden's physical health care was mismanaged, like there were gaps in surveillance, or he was not given the PSA test because his administration was trying to hide the results from the public, like they knew he had cancer and wanted to conceal that information because of the devastating effect it would have on his political career. In reference to Joe Biden's diagnosis, Donald Trump said, quote, "I think it is very sad, actually. I am surprised that the public wasn't notified a long time ago," unquote. An aide for Joe Biden disputed the implication made by Donald Trump, saying that Joe Biden had never been diagnosed with prostate cancer prior to May 16, 2025. The theories about a physical health cover-up have also been fueled by the belief that White House officials concealed Joe Biden's cognitive limitations. It might be more accurate to say they tried to conceal his limitations. They did not do a very good job. It was pretty obvious to everyone who observed Joe Biden that something was wrong. This takes me to item number 3. In order to answer questions about a potential cover-up regarding Joe Biden's physical health, it's critical to understand the characteristics of the PSA test. Again, this test measures the level of prostate-specific antigen. When detected at certain levels, which are predetermined, this antigen can point to the existence of prostate cancer. The PSA test is cheap and widely available. Guidelines state that the test is only indicated for men between the ages of 55 and 69. Physicians often stop conducting the PSA test at 70, although quite a few continue testing to the age of 75. It is very unusual for the test to be conducted on men over the age of 75. At first glance, this doesn't seem to make any sense. If the test is effective at detecting prostate cancer and prostate cancer is deadly, why don't men receive the test every year for their entire lives? Why is there an age cutoff? To answer this question, I need to talk a little bit about the constructs of sensitivity and specificity. Prior to receiving a PSA test, every man falls into one of two categories. They will either have prostate cancer or not have the cancer. For the sake of simplicity, let's pretend there is no gray area. This is binary, 0 or 1, cancer or no cancer. Just like the man will be in one of two states, the test will return one of two results. Again, let's assume there is no gray area. Based on whatever cutoff level is being used for the test, it will indicate that the man has prostate cancer or does not have cancer. Now, of course, the PSA test can be wrong, but it will indicate one result or the other, either way. If a man actually does have prostate cancer and the PSA test indicates that he does, this is called a true positive. The state of the man corresponds with the result from the test. The probability that the PSA test, or any test like it, will return a true positive is referred to as sensitivity. This is also called the true positive rate. Obviously, a test with a high level of sensitivity is more favorable than one with a low level of sensitivity. A good test should detect cancer that is actually there. If the PSA test returns a negative result with a man who has prostate cancer, this is referred to as a false negative. This is very unfavorable because the man has cancer, but the test indicates that he doesn't. In all likelihood, until physical symptoms manifest or another PSA test returns a true positive, the man will not be treated for the cancer that he actually has. The sensitivity for the PSA test is dependent on the cutoff level being used, but with the most common cutoff level, it is about 40%. So if 10 men with cancer are given a PSA test, 4 will receive a true positive. Presumably, more accurate follow-up tests will definitively detect the cancer and the men will be treated. 6 men will receive a false negative. They may be informed that there's nothing to worry about. Again, the test said negative. So the cancer is there, but the test indicates that it's not there. So from the sensitivity level, it's clear that the PSA test is a valuable tool, but it still leaves a lot to be desired. There are many false negatives. I talked about the possible outcomes when men with prostate cancer have a PSA test, but what happens for men who do not have cancer? In this case, the PSA test still yields one of two results, positive or negative. If the test returns negative, this would be a true negative. The cancer is not there, and the test said it's not there. This is an accurate outcome. The probability that the test will return a true negative is referred to as specificity. It is also referred to as the true negative rate. So what happens if the test returns a positive even though the man does not have cancer? This is referred to as a false positive. The test is causing alarm when there is nothing to worry about. The specificity for the PSA test, just like the sensitivity, is dependent on the cutoff level being used. For the most common cutoff level, the specificity is around 75%. This means that 1 in 4 men without cancer will have a positive result. What happens sometimes with the PSA test is that a physician lowers the cutoff level. This means that a lower level of PSA in the bloodstream will trigger a positive result. This, of course, increases sensitivity, which is good, but it decreases specificity, which is bad. The result is a catastrophically high rate of false positives. Now let's move back to how this applies to the case of Joe Biden. As I mentioned, his last PSA test was administered in 2014. Some people look at this as ridiculous. They wonder why he wasn't tested more often. Why was there a massive gap in surveillance? Here is a possible explanation for why that was the last PSA test he received. As a man grows older, the specificity of the PSA test decreases dramatically, meaning there are more false positives. This is because older men are more likely to have elevated PSA without cancer. Even for the high, more common cutoff level, the specificity can drop to 50% for men who are 70 years of age and older. False positives lead to treatment, like radiation or surgery, which of course are not required because there is no cancer. These men will experience painful and life-changing side effects. By not testing older men, physicians are sparing men from unnecessary anxiety and expense. In the case where the PSA test would have returned a true positive, the outcome is not as bad as one may think. The age of the man is working in his favor. The cancer usually grows slowly and is unlikely to be fatal. To put it bluntly, another condition is more likely to kill the man. This brings me to my last item, number 4. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Joe Biden stopped receiving the PSA test due to his age, which was consistent with the guidelines for the application of that test. There was a statistical justification to discontinue testing. However, unfortunately, there was a terrible outcome. Joe Biden developed the cancer after his last PSA test. This is simply a case of bad luck. I don't believe there was a conspiracy to conceal the cancer. Nobody knew about the cancer. The problem, as far as the public being suspicious about what's going on here, arose due to the media downplaying all the cognitive difficulties that Joe Biden experienced. The mainstream media tends to lean left, and this affects their reporting accordingly. In a perfect world, it would not, but this is not a perfect world. The media sowed the seeds of doubt. They were intentionally deceptive. It makes sense that a lot of people would be concerned about a cover-up after hearing about Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis. The lesson here is that the media needs to be honest. Every time they have resorted to deception, American citizens have paid the price. The media now blames people for being suspicious about Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis, yet the media only has itself to blame. The failure of the media to report truthfully and comprehensively about Joe Biden's health status has, ironically, fueled the kind of distrust and suspicion they routinely and vigorously decry. In a democracy, the media is supposed to be a watchdog, not a protector of political figures. Those are my thoughts on Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Sensitivity and specificity are some of the most difficult concepts to understand for a lot of students studying assessment and counseling. Now, of course, the study of cancer is different than the study of counseling, but the assessment theory is really the same. A lot of tests are designed using the same structure. There is something out there they are trying to detect. The test either successfully detects it or it misses it. It doesn't matter if it's cancer, depression, anxiety, obsessive thoughts, paranoia. all the testing really works the same, again, as far as testing theory. One easy way to remember sensitivity and specificity is to think about it like this. If a person comes in and they have the diagnosis, using the example of depression, a person comes in and they actually have depression, what are the chances that a test will detect that depression? That is sensitivity. If a person comes in and they do not have depression, what are the chances that the test will accurately indicate they don't have depression? That's specificity. So for a test to be really good, to be useful to a wide number of people across all types of different circumstances, it really should have high sensitivity and high specificity. Both of those constructs are important. Unfortunately, many tests in the world of counseling do not. They have relatively low sensitivity and low specificity. Human beings are very complex, and it is difficult to accurately assess them. Even so, the tools still have some utility. As we see from the example from the medical world, looking at the PSA test in cancer, that test doesn't really have great numbers as far as sensitivity and specificity, but it is still considered pretty valuable. So the numbers don't have to be perfect, but again, the higher the better. The way to develop better tests is to conduct research. So it's important that research continues in any area where people want to be accurately diagnosed, whether that's in the world of physical health or in the world of mental health.